But it's the only way you're ever gonna learn. You look back and it's all in the past. I'm dwelling on the thoughts I cannot say to you. If I don't say the words, then maybe it's not true. And it feels alright.
Good morning, welcome to NUFC Matters with me, Steve Wraith. It is the Supermac and Gibbo show. Good morning, chaps.
Good morning. Good morning.
Hi, John.
I'll
Good
get
morning,
into the middle
guys.
of you like a rose between two thorns, lads.
Well, I could think of something else, but I won't.
Great to see you, lads. Obviously, we had a week off last week due to me doing a bit of graft, but great to see you. And as always, plenty to talk about with Newcastle United. And because we missed last week, let's talk about the ups and downs of being a Newcastle fan, Malcolm. The first game against Aston Villa, a 5-1 win, so Newcastle planted firmly at the top of the league. Everybody was talking about how great it was. This week, we play treble winners. I'll repeat that. Treble winners, Manchester City at the Etihad. We get beat 1-0, and you think Newcastle were back in a relegation battle. That is what it's all about, being a Newcastle fan, Malcolm.
Well, yeah, I think that's a bit of an exaggeration, but
you need to get on. You need to get on Twitter more.
yeah, well, for that precise reason, I don't go on it.
Yeah, I know you do, man. I know you do. You put the show on there, but yeah, go on.
Well, I think that we shouldn't forget, because that second half against Aston Villa was brilliant. That last half an hour, absolutely amazing. But Villa, good heavens, their finishing was absolutely appalling. They had 3 or 4 really good chances and didn't take them. And so it wasn't the hammering that some people, I think, thought it was. It turned out to be a second half hammering, but the first half, it was, I think we got away with it a little bit. But against Man City, boy, did we really tighten up. And okay, so we lost away from home against the best side in Europe, and it was only 1-0. And in all honesty, I don't think they had another shot at goal, really. So I thought the team played really exceptionally well. It just needed one chance to be made to level the thing up, and that didn't come. But let's not forget, they are the best side in Europe. So I think we should take a lot of pluses from both games, by all means, and that I wouldn't think that Liverpool are overconfident about coming to St James Park on Sunday.
Yeah.
Okay, John, those 2 games, you get where I'm coming from, don't you? Because
Totally.
you see it, you get out there, you speak to the fans. You and Malcolm are doing a talk-in tonight with up in Prudhoe, so we know that you get out and you speak to the supporters. But you know where I'm coming from, don't you? It's that that modern day football kind of banter these days, isn't it?
Totally. I mean, I've seen a lot of the reaction, heard it, been confronted with it. When we won 5-1 on the opening day, we were going to win the Premier League title this season, according to some fans. And when we lost 1-0 at Man City, if we weren't careful, we were going to be no more on the mid-table side and perhaps not that good. I mean, the knee-jerk reaction of some people, I hasten to add, not all fans. A lot of fans see it exactly the way it is. But the knee-jerk reaction was absolutely ridiculous. I mean, one of my pet hates is seeing a league table after the first day of the season, where you play. In fact, in the old days on the Pink, they wouldn't produce a league table after one game because it was as ludicrous as you can get. There was 10 teams at the bottom with no points and 10 teams at the top with 3 points. I mean, it's crazy. But we ended up supposedly top of the league table because it was 5-1 on day 1. And then on day 2, Brighton were top of the table and they're going to scare everybody to death, etc., etc. Brighton were top after 2 games, 2 wins, and they beat Luton and Wolves. I'll suggest those two sides will be in a relegation fight this season. We played Aston Villa and took them apart. We played the European champions and only lost 1-0, and we've got Liverpool to come. So your starts to the season, Brighton are supposed to be walking on water. They've beaten Wolves and Luton, for goodness sake. Wait till they get a proper test before they walk on water. They might find themselves plodging up to their knees. I don't know. But it's just a nonsense, isn't it?
Yeah.
And, we beat, I take the point Mal was saying against Villa because they did have chances. And the first half was seesaw. But we beat them 5-1. Look what they've done since. They put 5 in the league. They went up to Hibs. And by the way, a lot of top English sides could go up to Hibs and win 5. But last night, normal service has been resumed with them. We got the points. We didn't get the points against Man City, but we lost by only a single goal. And if we beat Liverpool and we have 6 points out of 9, considering the 3 games we've played, that would be a terrific return.
Yes, wouldn't it just? Because that was 3 of the top 7 from last season.
Oh, I mean, it's a heck of a start. And I know it's an if, we've got to go out and get the points. But if I can make one point also, Steve, about Man City, there was a lot of people disappointed. I admit I thought we started a little bit timidly instead of being on the front foot against them. We started on the front foot against Aston Villa. Absolutely magnificent. So did they. But if we start on the front foot against Liverpool, they've got problems, mind. But when we compare ourselves to Man City and say, oh, what a disappointment, certain fans, other fans know, we've got to remember one thing. Sheikh Mansour took over Manchester City 15 years ago. Pep arrived 7 years ago. Eddie Howe and the owners are just going into their second full season at Newcastle United, and already we're in the Champions League. I mean, they might be where they are. They might be the utopia, the best side in Europe, possibly the world, the best club side. And they've done it treble. They've got a 4th trophy with the Super Cup. But the Sheikh's been in 15 years. Pep's been in 7 years. We've been in a couple of years. We tend to forget that sometimes because we've made such rapid progress. We think we've got to keep making that sort of rapid progress. What a disappointment.
Yeah. I think ultimately, lads, as well, 2 games in, we can't make a judgment on anybody. And I think that's the point you both make. And I asked the lads last night on Geordie's Here, Geordie's There about these 3 gents, Joe Linton, Bruno and Tonali. The 3 lads who started in our midfield trio in the first 2 games. Now, for me, I think, these are the 3 which will take us forward for the next, for the next couple of years, certainly in those positions. But I think we need to realise that these guys have got to learn to play together. And there was a bit of criticism, as there always is, by supporters, because they're entitled to. You pay your money, you can say what you want, I guess. But a lot of people have been criticising Bruno, and there's been a lot of people criticising Almiron. Those are the 2 in the midfield who seem to have come off, worse on the criticism of the supporters. My argument has been that because Tonali's been put into midfield, Malcolm, people have got to get used to it. There's a slight change of formation. Last year, we had that little triangle of Almiron, Bruno and Trippier, which created so much down that right-hand side. There's been a slight change in the midfield. We had Longstaff sitting really deep, Bruno pushing forward. At the moment, I think we've got 2 players there, certainly in Tonali and Bruno, who are very similar, Malcolm. And I think that's affected the dimension slightly. And I think Eddie Howe has to try and find a way around that. Against Aston Villa, we didn't struggle. Against Man City, because Foden was so good, I think he bossed the midfield. He was clearly man of the match by a country mile. But I think
he was sensational, I thought, against.
Do you think this 3 are the 3 to carry us through the season, Mal? Or do you think Longstaff or Anderson is going to feature a bit more?
Well, I think Tonali's new into the club. He's new into English football, and it's going to take a while for him just to get the whole feel of it, and it's it's one thing playing at St James Park. It's another thing playing at away from home, and particularly at Man City. So we've got to allow that bit of time. You know, when you think of the number of players that have been brought in from abroad by various clubs in the Premiership, and you don't see them play for a season, and they look to acclimatise them. Whereas Tonali, he's gone straight into it. In all fairness, I thought that he was doing really well in the game. Bruno, there's improvement to be made, I think, there. And Joe Linton found it difficult to get into the game against Man City. So but is that the fault of the Newcastle players, or is it just the brilliance of the Man City players and the way that they're organised and the way they play? And they are a fantastic side. Very, very, very difficult to play against. And it's not just Newcastle finding them difficult. Burnley, gee whiz, Burnley in the first game couldn't get the ball off them. So, Man City are not just the best in this country, they're the best in Europe at the moment.
Yep, I agree.
The one thing we've got to remember as well is that, and I know there was the difference playing home and playing away, and that's a huge difference, especially with the Newcastle United crowd the way they are. But if you remember, we played Aston Villa and we were worried to death about that exact midfield three you showed, Steve, on that photograph. We were worried to death because Villa's midfield had blown us away at Villa Park at the end of last season, 3-0.
Yes.
They'd run all over us in the States when it was 3-3, their midfield. We were worried about our midfield and Tonali handling, this is prior to the game, Tonali handling the physicality and the power of the Premier League from day one, etc., etc. Our midfield played them off the park over the whole 90 minutes. I mean, the second half, McGinn is one of the top batters in the midfield at Villa. Couldn't get a kick as the game went on against us. We went down there, and yes, it's a different ball game. And you're bound to get that. We're at home again on Saturday, and you would hope Tonali and the rest would pick up where they did against Villa. Start the game as we started against Villa, on the front foot, hounding them, using terrific pace to turn defence into attack, because that terrifies sides. Foden was a different class because also Foden, with De Bruyne out, etc., played in what I consider his best position, which is more central drifting right than playing as a winger, which is where he often had to play. And he played on the left wing as a winger till Grealish come, etc., etc. But place him central, and he'll run the show. And he did run the show. But, we've got to hope that those three go back, if Joe Linton's fit and starts, go back to what they did against Villa. As for Bruno, what's happened there is that he came in as one of our he was the standard bearer alongside Trippier, wasn't he? When we were going to go down the relegation side, new owners, new manager, what do we do? The big names that were signed immediately and pulled us out of the claggy with Trippier and Bruno and kept us up. And we went on from there. Bruno becomes such a fan cult hero and had his standards so high that if he dropped 5% beneath those standards, people were going to say, oh, is he what he was? And it's obviously irritated the boy because he snapped back this week, didn't he, on social media, and then immediately got it taken off because perhaps his command of English, which he's just learned, wasn't quite what it ought to be. And perhaps he said some things that he didn't quite mean if he was using Spanish. But, he set such a high standard that you get that sort of that sort of reaction if there's a slightest dip in it. But remember, we're well off in midfield. We've got those three, which we've talked about. We've got Sean Longstaff, who was so influential last season, can come in anytime. We've got Elliot Anderson, who was the darling of the pre-season, the best performances pre-season, both physically and in terms of goals and everything. And we've suddenly forgot about him again. You know, he's coming on in the last 5 minutes for 5 minutes at the end, and you can't impose yourself on a game in 5 minutes. He's gone back to being what he was last season and has been extremely unlucky. And long term, Joe Willock's there to come, who some people were building up to an England player last season. He's there to come in. So there's a lot of people round those three positions jockeying for positions. And isn't that wonderful? Because you look at it, the alternative, and every time I see Shaw going down holding his ankle, and bless him, he does that at least twice every game, the colour's draining from my face, because I think if he goes off injured, we're in big stuff, because he is the one position where we're not covered. And you know, I think, oh dear, every time he goes down, I would love us to get a right-sided centre-half before the end of the season. Not that I necessarily think Shaw needs replacing, but he often needs covering. You know, every other position, you've got Botman, Burns covering him. You've got new kid fullbacks to cover the first team fullbacks. I've just mentioned all the people in midfield. You've got Wilson and Isaac up front. You've got Barnes and Gordon on the left. You've got Almiron, Murphy. Gordon could move over there on the right.
Livramento.
Yeah, well, yes. We haven't got a right-sided centre-half unless Ando can play there.
Yeah.
Oh, no,
Yeah,
Anderson. John Anderson could play there, yeah.
John Anderson could, yeah. I mean, what did you make of the centre-half pairing? I mean, Malcolm, again, you know, the back four is what our success was built on last season. But to keep Haaland out of the game is no mean feat. And Botman, great stat. The only time that Haaland has failed to score back-to-back games against an opposition is against Newcastle and against Sven Botman at the Etihad.
Right. Yeah. And in all honesty, I thought he was quite invisible through a lot of the game, and the back four looked absolutely terrific. The goal that Man City scored, it was just one of those situations that Newcastle couldn't do much about it, in all honesty, and he struck it quite superbly. The keeper, I think he just got a fingertip end to it, and it wasn't enough to divert it away. So defensive-wise, I think we're absolutely fine. But as you say, John, have we got the cover should there be an injury or two? And probably no, we haven't particularly.
Shaw's the one position.
Yeah.
I mean, we've got full-back cover now because of the kids.
We have.
We've got Botman cover because that's Burns' proper position.
Yes.
So he can cover that. And so we're covered everywhere bar the right side of the centre-half. I mean, the ironic thing for me in that game at Man City, it was built up and I thoroughly understood it, why it was, but it was built up on two of the greatest centre-forwards in this country playing against each other, Haaland and Isaac, and neither really got a kick. Haaland was blotted out by us, and Isaac stood up. I tell you what, Gray's Monument stands all alone in the centre of town, and Isaac did, because nobody bothered getting in touch with him and saying hello at all. I mean, he was isolated up there, and it didn't matter when it changed to Callum Wilson or whatever.
That's right. It was much the same when Wilson came on. Yeah.
We didn't get round our centre forward.
Yeah. But do you knock Newcastle for that, or do you praise the way Man City are organised and played?
I think we didn't show too much going forward, too much adventure. Which I thought, if I had one criticism, and it's not the result, I mean 1-0 there, we have lost, I think, 17 of the last 19 or something against them. And the best result we had was 1-0 back at the beginning of the noughties, the 2003, I think. And this was only 1-0, so from that point of view, it was terrific. If you want to be critical, you could say there wasn't too much front foot stuff. But, I mean, Foden was the big difference. If Foden had played for us, we would have won. I think Foden ran the absolute show.
He really is some player, isn't he?
Oh, what a wonderful,
Really
wonderful player the little swine is.
And yet, through a lot of last season, he was spending most of the games on the bench.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And it was only sort of Mahrez going and other people going. It'll be interesting to see what happens to him now and where he plays him, because Bernardo Silva's just committed his feet, who looked certain to go. He's just signed a new 3-year contract.
Yes.
And it's going to stay. I mean, Pep's been panicking about all the players that were going. You know, where Mahrez went and the German boy went over to Barca, and it looked as if Kyle Walker went. So he literally got out his bike, didn't he, and went down to a restaurant. Pep on his bike went down. That's how he got his bad back, probably, which is why he's missing the next 2 games. Went on his bike, push bike, brilliant. And parked it outside the restaurant and spent the night with Kyle Walker, getting him to stay. And he's done the same with Bernardo Silva, who was going out, and all of a sudden he's staying. So that's like 2 new signings to them. But we are concerned about us and not them. And I'm just looking for us to get back on our front foot. You know, we often look at this side and talk about the entertainers, and it's significant because we're playing Liverpool this weekend. The entertainers played on the front foot all the time. They lost 4-3, that epic game at Liverpool, which was voted the greatest Premier League game there's ever been, 4-3 at Liverpool. And we were criticised there because we let in 4, and we were gung-ho, it was said. But you know what? Rather than say we were gung-ho, I say we were playing to our strengths. That team, that entertainer side, couldn't defend for 90 minutes, but they had the courage to say, right, we'll slug it out with you in a slugfest and see who wins. And it did get to second top of the Premier League, for example, so it couldn't have been that bad. And I just felt that with a little more encouragement, we could have been a little more adventurous against Manchester City than we were. But if we go back to what we did against Aston Villa, we will be all right against Liverpool, because this isn't the Liverpool of old.
No.
You know, Klopp has won the Champions League and the Premier League with Liverpool, but half of that team is now left or retired, from Henderson to Sadio Mane to the whole kit and caboodle, Oxlade-Chamberlain. They've all gone all over the shop, scattered. And this is a team in transition. And you know what? I look at this Liverpool side, and they defend like a pub team, and they attack like a dream team. When they're going forward, when then the opposition half, the front 3 look absolutely quality. If you get at the back 4, they look a pub side.
Yeah, good point. Quick one from Ian Toon Trader. Good morning, Ian. He says, do you think Alex Murphy looks like he could step up if Shaw got injured? He looked like a class act in pre-season when we played, and he was on the right side of the 2 centre-backs. I mean, it's another youngster, Malcolm, isn't it? Lewis Miley, Elliot Anderson, Alex Murphy. You know, the list is starting to grow.
Yeah, the manager, Eddie Howe, he's very careful how he puts the youngsters in. And I think he's wise to do that. You can't just chuck youngsters in, particularly at the level that Newcastle are at. So, he needs to get the taste and the flavour and the feel of what it's like to play in the Premier League. Pre-season friendlies are one thing, totally different to playing in the Premier League. And yes, he showed up very well in pre-season, but he needs to be slowly blooded.
Yeah, I'd agree, Malcolm. I think he's a terrific one for the future. I think he scored with that pre-season. I think Lewis Miley showed us that pre-season, and neither of them got on the bench, although there's 9 on the bench the last game, if you remember. And they will be 2 stars of tomorrow. And Elliot Anderson ran the pre-season, and he hasn't got anywhere near starting the team in the last 2 games. It is a different ball game. Having said that, You know, I think Lewis Hall coming is a terrific signing. I mean, for me, I am very, very excited about this kid. He's 18, coming up 19 in about a month. When I've seen him play for Chelsea, and he's played a dozen first team games for Chelsea, and he's only 18. He's looked to have quality, good feet, good going forward. He was the Academy Player of the Year. He's only leaving because he was desperate to leave the club for more game time. Now, if he got a dozen games and he wants more game time, he will have mentioned to Eddie Howe, by the way, will I get a few games up here because I'm leaving? If I'm going to get 12, I may as well have stayed where I was. Now, he's the perfect signing because A, he's quality, B, he's 18, and C, his dad's a Geordie. I mean, what more could you want than that? I mean, he's made for this club. And the funny thing is, Livramento on the other side, Livramento, I look at him, he was an ex-Chelsea Academy Player of the Year. You know, he's 21 and Hall's 18 in this Lintrust Malcolm. I look at those two. I think Hall will get in this side very, very quickly because I think we need an actual left back. He produces huge balance. He's terrific going forward, which is not Dan's strength. Dan Burns not a going forward man. He's a defender. And I think he's got a great future at this club. We need cover for Sven Botman, and he will stay very much in this club, but I don't think he's a left back. And very shortly this season, and it could be in the next few weeks, Hall will be our left back. Livramento will have to wait longer because he's got Trippier in front of him. I mean, it's better if you're a young fullback, it's better to have Burn in front of you than Trippier, but next season can be a different thing. But you know what? 21 and 18, you know what I see for these two kids? I see them as our full-back pairing for the next 10 years. Once they get in the team together, which together might be next season, but I see them 10 years. I see them, and this will be significant to Malcolm, I see them as the modern-day answer to David Craig and Frank Clark. Because they were the last full-back pairing. They were the last full-back pairing to win anything at St James's, the 1969 European Fairs Cup. Craig played 435 games for us, despite missing 2 Wembley Cup finals through injury. Clarkey played 487. That is how consistent those two are. I think that Livramento and Hall have the potential to be like those two. Different sorts of players. I mean, Frank Clark's hugely different.
Sure, but the game's different now, John.
Sorry?
The game is different.
Oh, of course it is. But in terms of being regulars, in terms of partnerships, if they stay clear of injury and they live up to their potential, I think they can be the two, because they're 21 and 18 John, and already first team players.
But you can see what Eddie Howe and Dan Ashworth are doing together, that they are creating they're creating the next stage in their own youth, and I think it's incredibly exciting because if we're looking for the players that are going to be playing in 2, 3, 4 years, they're there at the club.
Yes, because if you enter Malcolm, you're absolutely
right. Brought in as youngsters. And they can learn the Newcastle way. They get a complete feel, be totally at home, and by the time they get into the first team, they know exactly what the whole club is about.
There's Anderson to come in. There's Lewis Miley to come in. There's Alex Murphy to come in. And let us not forget, because we do forget because of the money they cost and because of their seniority now. But Isaac's 23, Gordon's 22, Harvey Barnes 24, 25. I mean, there's a lot of senior players that are around now that are on the right side of 25. Instead, there isn't the wrong side at 25.
And when these youngsters that we were talking about, when they come in, they've got those experienced guys who have been in the side for 3 seasons or whatever, and Oh, and the whole thing is going to be an absolute fabulous mix of skill and of ages.
Yep. It's,
Okay, we're halfway through the show, lads. Time for the ads.
A big thanks to all our sponsors, Skips and Bins. You can find them at skipsandbins.com or telephone 0800 25 45 25 3. Email inquiries at skipsandbins.com. Website skipsandbins.com. Easy contract free and pay-as-you-go waste collection. Big thanks to Mr. Vicky's sauces handmade in Cumbria. You can order them from their website, mrvickys.co.uk, or by telephoning 01768 210 102. A big thanks also to New Workwear. You can find them at newworkwear.com. They're an agile and dedicated workwear provider. Welcome back as well to United Travel. They are a UK coaches firm and they are based in the Northeast. They've got 2024 tours and you can contact them on 01670 632 460 or mobile 0791 666 4174. Email info@unitedgrouptravel.com and they've got a website which is unitedgrouptravel.com. There's no strangers on their tours, just people you haven't met yet. Big thanks to them for their sponsorship. Big thanks as well to Media Arts, and they supply all the video technology. If you want to become a member and get a cup, a pen, a membership card, and a scarf, then get your smartphone and put it over this QR code. It will take you straight to the membership pack. It's a £25 one-off fee. You can also go to NUFC Matters website and search membership pack to book today. If you want to help the channel, then subscribe to it by hitting the subscribe button. Hit the thumb up under the video to like the video and click share to share to your other social media. We're also available as a podcast on iTunes, Spotify, and other podcast providers. Don't forget, we help the food bank on this channel. If you want to do so virtually, go to nufcfansfoodbank.co.uk and make a donation today. The Alan Shearer raffle is back on. 150 tickets, £1 a ticket. Win a limited edition signed Alan Shearer ball. Enter today at nufcmatters.com.
And don't forget, the breakfast show starts this Monday. There's been a couple of things that we've had to do to get ready for this, but I'll be going live 7 o'clock on Toon Radio across the Northeast with a Middlesbrough fan called Rick, who lives in Australia. So I'm looking forward to doing this 5 days a week, 7 till 9. I'll be a bit bleary-eyed each night, I think, but looking forward to doing it. We'll see where it goes. Big thanks to Dave for the opportunity. As always, though, plenty of questions coming in. I want to go with this because Malcolm's on the panel. Just want to ask you, Malcolm, do you think we need another striker in before the transfer window closes? Because although we've been talking there about Fabian Schär getting injured, maybe he's been short in the centre-back department, Eddie Howe seems to think that we're okay going in to this first part of the season with Anthony Gordon as the backup to Isak and Wilson. There's also people still asking this question, which we got asked last year. Would you play Isak and Wilson together as opposed to playing one or the other?
Well, right. I'll take the latter part first because I think that Eddie Howe has talked with the two guys, and Wilson he's not a 90-minute man. That's now beyond him, and so he can guarantee you maybe 20 to 30 minutes every game because of his hamstring problems. And so, and he will come on, and in 20 or 30 minutes, he will score most of the time that he's on the park. I think that works well. Can they play together? Yes, of course they can play together. And you'll see Wilson plays very much in that part of the pitch that literally is between the posts from one end to the other. That's where he plays, right in the centre. And so Isak, it suits him to go wide and then come in. And so, yes, they would be a perfect pairing. But I'll go to the first part of now of the email that was sent in, and that is, do we need another striker? And yes, we do. I don't think that Gordon is a central striking, goal-scoring forward, and so it's a make-do situation. I would rather get somebody, but probably they are looking right now for somebody, because the one thing they don't do is bring in short-term old players. They bring in youngsters, and so we don't know exactly what there is in the youth side. They might be looking and saying, look, there's a lad there who in 12 to 18 months is going to be a star, but give him time, and so they'll just keep the wraps on him. I don't know, but yes, I think we need somebody, and it's as cover. But you're never going to get the quality if you're because the first thing a player will ask Eddie Howe when they sit down together before he signs is, do I regularly play? And when Eddie Howe says, well, no, we're looking at you for backup, well, that puts a different slant on everything, doesn't it? You know, that here's a guy who's got to be prepared to sit on his backside on the bench throughout most of the season. And you're not going to get a massive goal scorer to do that. It just doesn't happen. So they've got to play it. They've got to play it clever. In all honesty, if they're with regards to somebody playing up front, what about Anderson?
I think certainly the answer to the question that the gentleman was on about, do we need another striker, and can Callum Wilson and Isak play together? First of all, you're not going to get another striker because Eddie Howe ain't going to sign another striker. He's going to sign absolutely nobody or a right-sided centre-half. Now, so whether you want one or not, prepare yourself to be disappointed because you ain't going to get one. That's the first thing to say. The second thing to say, when you say, can Wilson and Isak play together, as Malcolm says, they can, unquestionably, and they may well play together in the way that Wilson played centre-forward and Isak played left wing last season. Although ahead of Isak as a left winger now is both Gordon and Harvey Barnes, so he's not going to get in there. But in the old traditional sense of MacDonald and Tudor and Jackie Milburn and George Robledo and etc., you're not going to get them playing together in a two. They could, but you're not going to get them because he doesn't like that formation. Eddie Howe doesn't like a narrow two. He likes a centre forward and two wide guys, and he will stick religiously with that. Yes, if we're chasing a game and there's injuries and he brings on his sub, you might, in some game after 70 minutes, see Isak and Wilson marauding down the middle because we need to get a goal back. But they won't start like that. They won't start a game like that. It won't happen. And as Malcolm said, one of the things that Eddie thinks about is if you're going to get, in an ideal world, we want a goal scorer, but if you're going to get a goal scorer and you're going to tell him, we play with one centre forward and two wingers, and our first centre forward's Isak, and our second centre forward's Callum Wilson, but we'd like you to be a third centre forward. How good do you think that kid's going to be to sign for Newcastle? Third centre forward, and you only play one at a time. He's not going to come. And that's why they will use Gordon as a false nine if the emergency comes. You wouldn't be picked as a false nine ahead of Isak and Wilson if they're available. It would just be if they weren't. And he would be, so it would only be very occasionally that he was needed to play there. And whether we want it or not, that's what Eddie will do. We won't buy his centre forward this window at all, and he won't start them as shoulder to shoulder centre forwards, the two of them. And by the way, if I could only sign one bloke between now and September the 1st, I would still go back and make it a right-sided centre half.
Yeah, I fully agree, lads. I fully agree. Great points as always. This show's never long enough, and we've got so many good questions coming in. I'm going to have to cherry pick, unfortunately, the best ones. Malcolm's internet's done an old style disappearing act. So I'm sure he will be back. So John, I'm gonna start with you with this one.
I love he's changed position. He's playing on the left wing now. He was on the right wing before.
I'm like Isaac. I can play in any position.
Yeah, anywhere.
He's still as quick as he was in the 70s. Steer me out. JB says, what does Supermac and Gibbo think about so many soft yellows, in my opinion, being dished out this season in most games? Well, John, I'll come to you first because you're now on that side. What's your views on this? There's been rule changes, John. They love to change the rules just to confuse us all and to confuse the officials. But what's your take on the yellows that have been dished out so far?
Well, I mean, Ed, isn't there the rules of football basically have been the rules of football? The last major change was the offside, wasn't it? Back in 1920 something when McCracken made them change it because Newcastle. Everybody was offside a yard inside the Newcastle half because McCracken and Colin Veach had got off to a tee. That was the last change. But we tinker with the rules, don't we? We tinker with it. VAR comes in, you get the VAR thing, then you get, right, what do we do this season? We've got to change something. Or we'll clamp down on time wasting. All that because people have got on the high horse and had a dip at Newcastle United over alleged time wasting, which was blown up completely. By the way, time wasting, that it's called now, used to be called professionalism, seeing a game out, holding the ball, taking it into corner flag. What a clever bunch of players this is. Now you have a time waster if you do it, unless it's your team doing it, and then you're professional again. I mean,
Newcastle have been criticised for doing it.
That's what I'm saying. That's why there is this time wasting. Time wasting's in this.
It's not as if they're booting the ball out the ground.
No. But that's why there's been this clampdown this season because so many big hitters, including Klopp, who's on his way up here, have sort of said, keep an eye on Newcastle, watch Newcastle, just trying to put seeds of doubt. And it was said early in the season as well, this flurry of yellow cards. I mean, I just wish in lots of ways they would just leave the laws alone and let us get on with it. And the thing with VAR, and it's taken a hammering, and I'm a great critic at what's gone wrong. But you know what? The technical part of VAR is not emotional, is not biased for one team or against it, because it's a piece of technology. The reason VAR gets it wrong so regularly is not because VAR gets it wrong, but because of the human beings that run VAR interpret the VAR thing wrongly. That's how it goes. Technology isn't going to get something wrong, isn't going to be biased against Newcastle or for Manchester United, but the people running it who view it and draw the lines or forget to draw the lines or decide, famously, as Malcolm said, and I love the phrase, Isaac down at Liverpool when his shadow was offside, not him. I love that, because that summed it up perfectly. It's the people looking at the cameras that are human beings and therefore make mistakes. And I'm sick to death of the onus being on referees and stupid decisions and offside. I like the onus to be on how good was Isaac's goal and how on earth did he get wriggled up that touchline before chipping the ball across for Murphy, and how did that 40-yarder from Murphy go in to give him his little face job and the hands, glory, hallelujah, all over the pitch. I like the big things of football rather than the negative things.
Sure. If you... At least, though, the clubs have been told about the changes.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
They've been itemised out. Do you remember, John, when I first joined Newcastle United, in the start of the 71-72 season, we played Crystal Palace on the Saturday away, and then on the Wednesday, Tuesday or Wednesday, we played Tottenham Hotspur at White Hart Lane, and between the two games, the referees had been newly instructed as to how to referee the game, and so we played it under sort of one set of rules on the Saturday, and on the Wednesday, the referee started booking everybody for the slightest little infringement. That at that time, the sort of the tackle from behind, it wasn't necessarily penalised full stop. There were ways in which you could get away with it, and Mike England came in from behind, booted me, and I should always remember the referee gave him a yellow card, and Mike England, who was captain of Wales and Spurs at the time, he said, "You're booking me for that?" He said, "Do you know you've just put me out of a job, ref?"
Because you made a living out of doing that, didn't you?
Yes,
you made a living out. I tell you,
right. You just put me out of a job, he said.
The one thing that bothers me this season, is that I keep missing my bus home, because there's about 10 minutes put on the first half, and there's about 10 minutes put on the second half.
Sure.
And the game now is 2 hours, and all of a sudden I'm thinking, oh, am I too late for the bus there, or can I get a train there? Or and also, if you're working on a deadline for your column in the Chronicle, you're sort of thinking, oh dear, it's going on and on. Games are now lasting eternity. You've got no idea when they're going to finish, have you?
How many times do you pick up the morning paper, look at the football results, and it's got LL.
Late.
Yeah, because it's going on, and they've got to get the print out, and the results haven't finalised.
I tell you what, if Liverpool win with a 98th minute goal on Sunday, there'll be a Stewart's inquiry, I'll tell you, because that's what they did at Anfield, wasn't it? With 98th.
Yes, it was.
And by the way, said we deserved it because we're a bunch of time wasters. Remember that?
Yeah. But Klopp, he was just trying to justify what was going on, because I seriously felt that the referee through the game, he was finding all sorts of ways to penalise Newcastle, letting Liverpool get away with all sorts. But then it was, I think it was about 8 or 9 minutes of added time. And they scored 8 minutes into that. And I thought, having given a goal, he's going to blow the final whistle straight away. And that's exactly what he did. And I thought, he was just stretching it out to give Liverpool a chance of winning the game.
And you haven't even mentioned him deciding that Isak's goal was offside.
Well, that's right. And that was just one of the crazy decisions that the fellow was making, and everything was stacked against Newcastle. Everything went in the favour of Liverpool, and I thought, this is a stitch up, total stitch up. But with this adding of time now, and I've seen games that there's been 12 minutes, 14 minutes. It's absolutely ridiculous. It can't. The ball cannot be out of play for that length of time. I really can't see it. And they're adding that time on without long stoppages for injuries.
I mean, we had 30 seconds on for substitutions, and there are more substitutions these days. So, you can make...
Yes,
and of course,
and they had 30 seconds on for each substitution.
Yep.
And they had 30 seconds on for each goal that's scored.
Yeah, and we now have concussion substitutes, and if that's taken into consideration, that can add an extra 30. I
Yeah.
mean, it's crazy. I mean, it's no wonder none of us can keep up with what is actually happening and what is going on. We've got 10 minutes left, lads. I just want to squeeze in two more quick ones. We'll come to the game last, and just a quick one on Adidas. John Gandhi says, not sure if it's been asked yet. What are your thoughts about the return of Adidas as a kit supplier? I guess we're all just delighted that they're coming back because it means more money in the kitty, John.
Yeah, that's the simple answer on kit providers or sponsorship deals or signs above the tunnel or whatever you want to say. It's just increasing our revenue, which increases our punching power in the marketplace for players because of financial fair play. So, I mean, I'm glad it's a reputable firm like Adidas. But I'm just glad every time there's a big sponsorship deal on, and I'm particularly glad if it's not a Saudi-based one, not because I'm against their money or against them, but I'm against all the publicity that brings hurtling back onto our heads. So it's a straight bat and pad one, isn't it? And I'm delighted. And
somebody suggested they might buy it one day and call it Saudi-Das.
Well, hey, I wouldn't be surprised if that happens. Most things are being bought. I mean, golf was bought on block, wasn't it? and the world heavyweight title fights are regularly shipped out there to take place. So if you've got money, you can buy virtually anything.
Mal, it's more money in the coffers, isn't it? And Adidas and Newcastle did do rather well back in the entertainers' days.
Well, yes, it is. But it's the financial impact that it has on the club, because there'll be a vast amount of more money going into the club's coffers to what they were getting from Castore, and that means that the transfer kitty can rise, that there aren't going to be the restrictions, so I think as the Mike Ashley deals start to run out of time, and new deals are put in, that it will be much to the improvement in the transfer situation for Newcastle. The value of the club will be going up and up and up, and so we'll be able to wheel and deal far greater in the market than we're able to at present.
Okay, Newcastle United take on Liverpool this Sunday, 4:30 kick-off live on Sky Sports. Newcastle will be looking for the first victory over Liverpool since the 2-0 success back in 2015. Liverpool have won 4 of the last 6, with the other 2 ending in draws. Team news, well, obviously Eddie Howe's press conference is a little later this week, but we do know that Emil Kraft and Joe Willock remain on the sidelines. We don't know about Joe Linton yet. We'll get an update from Eddie Howe at his press conference, because obviously he limped off at Man City. And Jacob Murphy should be available. Congratulations to him, of course, on becoming a dad. As for Liverpool, well, McAllister, surprise, and rightly so, I've got to say, did have his red card overturned. And again, we just wait on Liverpool's press conference to find out who else is available for them. Referee is John Brooks, and VAR is Stuart Atwell. So, John, are we going to go unchanged in this game, do you think? Or do you think there may be the chance that he might start Barnes? Because it has to be said, although there's an aggressiveness and a great work ethic from Gordon, there seems to be a lack of creativity. Do you think maybe we might see Barnes start this one? Or do you think he'll go for another unchanged team and make changes as he goes?
It's funny you should say that, because you must have read my mind and also the piece that I wrote this morning to file in the Chronicle.
Right. So you're the same mindset as me.
I've said the one thing, I wouldn't be surprised if it was an unchanged team. This is providing Joe Linton's fit, of course, because if not, Sean Longstaff for me would come in for Joe Linton. But if he is fit, the only thing, if he's fit, you continue with Isak centre forward because he's absolutely quality. You continue with Tonali because you remember what Tonali did at St James's Park in the last home game, etc., etc., etc. The only decision, you don't get Hall in yet because he's just arrived in the club and feeling his feet. The only decision for me is outside left. And Gordon is one of our quickest players. He did terrific early doors against Villa, etc., etc. But, and it's a 50-50 toss-up for me between the pair. Why I would go for Barnes is because he guarantees more goals than Gordon. Gordon's finishing is what lets him down. I think he can look good in approach. I'm never confident. Let's put it this way. If Gordon's running in from the left wing towards the near post with the ball on his left foot, or in exactly the same position as Harvey Barnes, which one of them is going to tuck it inside the far post for a goal? Harvey Barnes every day rather than Anthony Gordon, who will do it occasionally. Harvey Barnes, 13, top goal scorer, Leicester last season. Leicester went down. He brings goals to the table. And you can't just rely on your centre forward getting goals. You've got to have some from other positions. And therefore, I would go for both. Both are big money signings. Gordon for 40 million, Barnes for 38 or whatever it is. I would start with Barnes on Saturday, but it's a flip of a coin, and it's purely because I think he's more likely to finish than Gordon. But I tell you what, Gordon is a decent player, and he will put, in my humble opinion, he'll put pressure on Almiron to get in on that side of the pitch if Barnes establishes himself on the left side. And Almiron's right to be in now, but we keep saying that there's nobody covering Shaw, there's only Murphy covering Almiron, but Gordon could play over there.
Yes, he could.
The
Yes,
one
he
change
could,
that
John.
was, yep.
And in all honesty, I felt Almiron was just completely isolated out of the Man City game. He seemed to be sort of looking around as if he just didn't recognise the situation that he was in.
And this comes back down to that formation
lost.
thing that I was saying at the start, Mal. I think he's suffering massively because of it, because of Tonali's inclusion. I think we're seeing there's been a slight change, and I think it's affected it. That's my view.
I'm getting the feeling that that the game is moving beyond Almiron. Mm-hmm. That Almiron, if he doesn't work hard to stay in the game, mm-hmm. then there's no alternative but to exclude him.
So what would you do? What would you do Sunday against Liverpool, Mal?
I would play Barnes on the left and possibly Gordon on the right with Isak the forward. And Wilson would probably replace him with 20, 25 minutes left. But I would play Barnes for sure.
Okay. All right. Interesting. Not many changes, but I think we're all probably of the same kind of mindset. Nothing surprising there. Okay, let's have a prediction from you, John.
Right. Well, I want Newcastle to start on the front foot as they did against Aston Villa. It is absolutely essential to get at them. Newcastle terrifies sides when they play at a good tempo. They've got forwards who are blisteringly quick. When we play on the counter and we hammer at them physically, quickly, with the feet that Isak's got and our wide players have got, and the base we've got in midfield and what Tonali can produce, I want us to start the way we did against Aston Villa and not the way we did against Manchester City. Because for me, the first 10 minutes of any game between any two sides often determines how that game goes. The side that flies at the opposition puts them on the back foot. They never get time to breathe until half time, the opposition, if you get at them. And they're dodgy at the back. They're not dodgy at the front, but they're dodgy at the back. You know what I'm hoping? I'm hoping that the one guy I thought was tremendous all last season and had one nightmare, eradicates that nightmare, and that's Nick Pope, who I thought was absolutely fabulous. He played Liverpool up here. He let two in the first quarter of an hour. He was off after 23 minutes. He missed the League Cup final at Wembley as a consequence of that. Liverpool up here for Nick Pope was his one nightmare. I even include the 3-0 at Aston Villa. The real personal nightmare was letting two in quarter of an hour, being sent off in 23 minutes, self-destructing thinking he was Win Davies trying to head the ball halfway down the pitch, bless him, and falling on it and getting sent off. Missed the greatest moment of Wembley final as a consequence of that. Let him do what has been a rarity in 2023, which is keep a clean sheet. We've only had 2 since the beginning of February.
Yeah.
If he comes back and keeps a clean sheet, we win. We don't draw, we win.
Okay.
If he keeps a clean sheet. So, and by the way, I'm saying he won't keep a clean sheet. I haven't said that, but we'll win 2-1.
2-1. I'm going 1-1. What about you, Mal?
Yeah, I'm the same as John.
2-1.
It's going to be a tight old game, but I think we'll nick it 2-1.
All right, that's great. What a great show. That's been great to have everybody back. You can hear this again. We'll be on Tune Radio on Friday night with, as I say, I've linked up to do the breakfast show with them. They've kindly agreed to promote the show on there for us as well. And as we leave, Wolves have rejected an opening bid from Manchester City of 47 million for Matheus Nunes. So it looks like Wolves are about to lose another big name player. But for now, thanks to Malcolm, thanks to John, and we will see you 11 o'clock, next Thursday. Have a good one tonight, lads. Take care.
All right. Many thanks.
Okay.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.